Hello from Ljubljana. This is the after party, if you like, of the Polyglot Conference. I've had a long, slow morning. I've found quite a cool hipster cafe now, so I've rolled up my trousers a bit to come in. I'm going to roll up my sleeves now, and I thought I'd do a bit of a review of the event. I vlogged, of course, from there, but with the vlogs, the idea was really to convey the vibe a bit and to, give a voice to participants at the conference, and not to talk so much about the substance and the organisation of the thing. So that's what I want to do now. I have to admit that when I heard that the conference was going to take place in Ljubljana, when the announcement was made in Reykjavik last year, I was a little bit disappointed. Simply because I've never been here, but the Polyglot gathering was going to be in Bratislava, so I thought, well, these are going to be two rather similar cities. Pity we're not going somewhere completely different. Actually, I've been thrilled to come here for the first time. It's a lovely town. I haven't got enough time here actually to explore, so hats off to the organisers for choosing this location. I certainly want to come back to Ljubljana. Slovenia, Ljubljana has a feel of Bratislava a bit about it, similar sort of size, similar sort of architecture, and a similar sort of lovely vibe, I have to say. The location itself was the Grand Union Hotel. I thought that worked really well as a venue. There was a lot of space there. There was this huge main hall where I spent most of my time actually, which was really, really impressive. It had a gallery going around the top, which worked great for vlogging as well. Things were on 2 floors, so the other 2 rooms were in the floor above. Maybe having 2 floors sort of meant people were less likely to wander from one thing to the next. I noticed that the room where was set aside for speaking different languages didn't seem as well frequented as the one last year, which was just to the right as you came out of the main hall in Reykjavik. But that's a minor point. I mean, geography, the layout, always influences the way the thing works, and that's going to change from year to year. The staff were really helpful. The place had probably the biggest gents' toilets I've ever seen, cubicles galore, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And it was really, really central. I almost couldn't get there because of the marathon on day 2, but once I got there, it was a great hotel. As for the food, the vegan sandwiches, but the coffee wasn't bad, and they did a great job at the coffee shop, because some of us kept going to the serving counter, which is actually for the staff of the cafe, and they were very tolerant about serving us with our beverage. So moving on to the programme and looking at what I actually heard, as Richard Simcott told me in a quick clip I did with him on the vlog from day 2, diversity was the theme, and that was reflected on the programme. There was something about Romani, the Romani language, for example. There was a talk on diversity of writing systems, and there was a talk in Italian on using minority languages in culture. There's also a session on Braille. And then there was a local flavour, as is always the case with the conference, so there were sessions on learning Slovene and a workshop on the language too. I actually focused and picked out talks which were to do with method mainly, because I felt for me they're of interest to me in what I'm doing on howtogetfluent.com with my own language learning, ideas that I can test and apply. So I was biased towards that sort of talk. And I picked my own individual way, therefore, through the programme, as you'd expect. I'm going to talk now about some of the talks that I heard. I also was biased towards new speakers, new to me, that's to say. So when there were things on the programme by people I know are great speakers and they were going to give great talks, like Lydia Machova or Simon Ager, I tended to avoid those and take a risk on something new, just to broaden my horizons a bit. Somebody I had heard before last year was Johan van der Walle. Last year he talked about the Turkic languages. He's a professional university linguist, and he had a great talk which kicked things off for me on creating and using bilingual texts. I haven't used bilingual texts much, but he did have some good pointers for things to watch out for. So if the language is very different in the way that it works from your own language, a parallel text when you're going from English to try and learn an agglutinative language like Turkish, for example, or even more so a synthetic language like like Greenlandic, polysynthetic, it's not going to work nearly as well as when the two languages are close together. So you better use a Spanish parallel text to learn Catalan, for example. Another thing to watch out for that he pointed out was make sure the text is, the original of the text is in the target language, and so that you're sure you're getting a really idiomatic target language version. And be careful in lesser used languages that the text hasn't been translated not from the original but through several other languages. So that was a good talk, quite academic in tone. Another professional academic, Angelo De Leo, I hadn't heard him speak before. He was looking at anthropological perspectives on language learning, particularly the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Someone told me afterwards they thought, there was too much in that talk they couldn't keep up. He was certainly delivering it in a very animated way at a great pace, clearly firing and sparking on all cylinders. I really enjoyed it. I had quite a bit of background to go on Boas and Whorf and so on. I knew a bit about anthropology already. Cryptotypes were discussed, one of Whorf's ideas. He lost me a bit there, I think. I was left unsure of the difference between cryptotypes and general, which is sort of covert categories in the way language is structured, and general pragmatics and the need to be culturally aware when using languages, which he talked about too, but I got a bit lost at that point. One of the tensions, I think, in a conference like this, which overlaps the academic and the enthusiast or popular side and tends more towards that, I suppose, is, how formal the talks get. So, you see different balance among the different speakers. One academic who always takes quite a popular approach in these talks, I say always, it's the second time I've heard him, is Gaston Doran, who is a linguist professionally, but who also writes popular scientific books, naучно popularny, as we say in Russian, I guess, on language, great books, and he is an extremely entertaining, popular speaker. So he's good at bringing his message out to a wider audience, and he was talking about 10 reasons to learn Vietnamese and 5 not to learn it. As always, he had a really clever use of image and illustrations as well, and he also brought in his iTalk iTeacher with recorded clips from her shown on the big screen. Basically, he came out very in favour of Vietnamese, but he did say it was a pretty difficult language, which makes it all the more rewarding. Another person who's good with the slides is one of the co-organisers, Alex Rawlings. His talk was on a world without borders, ohne Grenzen. He was talking about words which don't have equivalents in English, and that was tied into the book that he has just published on this topic. A great use of very entertaining images as well from Alex, and a really engaging talk. Then the Russians. A new speaker for me was Dina Niklucheva. She's an academic, a Germanist actually, but she was talking about different types of learning style, and she was stressing the importance of confidence in the accuracy of what you're learning if it's going to be imprinted on your memory. Her talk was more towards the academic side, I think. She talked a lot about learning styles. I thought learning styles were sort of being played down a bit in some of the stuff on the cognitive science that I've read, so I'm going to have to revisit that. But a good thing to come out of Dina's talk was the titles of her 2 books on polyglots and on language learning in Russian, both of which I'm now going to look up and read on the principle that you want to read in your language, your target language, for me, Russian stuff which interests you. Another Russian who was back was Grigory Kazakov, who as usual gave a very well-researched and well-pitched talk, influence of acoustics and soundscapes, and the interplay between how we hear and the oral element of language really stressed by Grigori. An interesting thesis he put forward, he presented, I'm not saying he was defending it, was that different people who've grown up in different language communities are sensitive to different ranges in physical terms, talking hertz, megahertz and so on, of languages. And apparently Slavic native speakers can hear a wider range on the audible spectrum, or they're not, they can hear it, but they're tuned into it more than speakers of any other language group, which he sort of suggested rather playfully might explain why you have clusters of linguistic pioneers, the Prague School, the great Russian linguists and so on, in the Slavic countries. Or maybe it's more cultural in the same way that, you know, after Bjorn Borg did so well in tennis, we had a cluster of inspired young, successful Swedish tennis players, if you can remember that far back. I don't know, but that was certainly another talk that I enjoyed. Now, talking about the influence between, you know, of personality, this was something that came out in Alexander Argyli's talk as well. And he was taking issue with an article which appeared in September in the New Yorker by Judith Thurman, looking at the characteristics of polyglots. And she had sort of argued at the end of that if you were gay, left-handed, on the spectrum, and you had some sort of autoimmune diseases or you know, sensitivities such as asthma, you were more likely to become a polyglot. Alexander wants to believe, as I would as well, that actually it's to do with choices that we make and that we can, you know, be what we want to be in a sense if we put the work in. So he's been doing a big survey of polyglots, and it's still open if you want to take part. I'll try and find a link and put it underneath. And he found actually that there was some truth in some of what she was saying, not all of that by a long way. But he found other correlations which you can't really explain away. So, for example, a polyglot is more likely to be ambidextrous and to be an oldest child for some reason, and to be from a monolingual background, which is less of a mystery in a sense. As Alexander was saying, I suppose if you've grown up with several languages, you maybe just take them for granted and you're not as excited by them. So that was another standout talk for me. There was a panel discussion at the end, which was great, and you know, we wound up then with the announcement of where the conference is going to take place next year. And that is in Fukuoka in Japan on the 18th to the 20th of October. They revealed that, they showed a bit of leg first because the dates appeared on the screen, and then a circle which looked like a rising sun on a black background. Then it went white dramatically. Everything was revealed. I have to admit, I had not heard of this city before yesterday. But it turns out that not only is Fukuoka a major city in Japan, it is also the home of one of the regulars at this event, Tim Keeley, who is an amazing guy, incredibly accomplished linguist who teaches, I think, management business studies in the university there through the medium of Japanese, as well as speaking, I think it was Lao and Vietnamese and Chinese, Mandarin and a host of other languages. Now, Tim is going to be the co-host next year at his university, and he's lived in the town for over 30 years, so he's certainly going to be a great host there with the other two regular organisers. So that's it really, that's a wrap for this year. It didn't disappoint. I'm leaving with lots and lots of you know, enthusiasm and inspiration as always, a certain amount of, you know, awe at the achievement of many of my fellow much more accomplished language enthusiasts. I'm really pleased to have met some new people, first-timers as well, people I've followed on YouTube, for example, as well, and other people I had never, you know, heard of or anything like that, who I was able to get into conversations with, or under whose noses I was able to poke a camera. So that's it for this year. Thanks a lot for being with me for the journey. If you followed the vlogs I did from the event, if you haven't, I'll link to them below. Don't forget to subscribe to the tribe, throw me a thumbs up, tickle that bell, and share the affair. Bye.